on unlocking the reformulation and unraveling the science of sweeteners. We are all delighted and privileged to have Shri Sanoj Kumar Ji Jha, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Food Processing Industry. So may I request you to please grace us on the dais. May I request Professor Ganguly to please on the stage. Professor Ganguly is the Honorary Senior Research Professor, Institute of Liver and Biliary Sciences, former Director General of Indian Council of Medical Research. Thank you very much. Now may I request Dr. Ashley Roberts, President, AR Toxicology Incorporation. Please place us on the dais, please. Dr. Roberts. So welcome you all once again. As you are aware, FICCI is one of the largest and the oldest apex business organization in India with almost 100 years of history as it works closely with the government on policy issues, enhancing efficiency and competitiveness, expanding business opportunities for industry through a range of specialized services and global linkages. It also provides a platform for sector-specific consensus building and networking within and across sectors and is the first part of the call for Indian industry, policymakers and international business community. As you may be aware that FICCI plays a key role in dealing with the policy subject matter to get an audience with the government and the industry. He has been working very closely with government authorities and industry for the growth and business of the food industry. At FICCI, we strive to serve our members through an entire gamut of activities pertaining to food industry requirements thereof, quality concern, food laws to facilitate and streamline processed food. Today we have gathered to listen to the experts and exchange views on unlocking reformulation and unraveling the science of sweetness. India's food and nutrition security is one of the strategic growth pillars of the country in this age with fast-paced life and continuously evolving consumers from wider demographics of population. It is pertinent that focus on healthy diet and lifestyle is one of the prime needs. In the space of healthy diet, there has to be a holistic focus on diet being contributed from all sources of consumption, pre-packaged foods, home-cooked food, away from home channels, etc. Pre-packaged food constitute to around 15% of the India's food consumption, poised to grow with the rapid advancement of food processing sector, and the growth of this sector is to India's growth and nutrition security. There is currently great interest in reducing the sugar content from foods to control dietary intake and curb obesity rates. Worldwide, there is a collaborative effort to reduce the consumption of sugar, fat, salt to enable and embrace healthier diets, and complementing this call out comes the consistent effort put by the industry to reformulate and renovate their portfolio to provide wider choices to consumers. Symposium today sets the forum to gather and comprehend scientific knowledge via evidence-based deliberations among multiple stakeholders in the food ecosystem: scientists, policymakers, dietitians, food industry professionals, to leverage understanding of the science and safety of non-caloric sweeteners and their importance as food reformulation tools. This initiative will pay a long way towards informed and science-based decisions, facilitating pragmatic policy setting to enable and unlocking reformulation. I welcome you once again to this international symposium and be part of the scientific deliberations. So thank you once again. May I now invite Professor Ganguly to share his thoughts. Professor Ganguly is currently working with the Professor Institute of Liver and Biliary Sciences, former Director General, Indian Council of Medical Research. Professor Nirmal Ganguly was awarded the prestigious Padma Bhushan Award by the President of India in 2008. He has guided or co-guided more than 130 students for their PhD thesis and authored or contributed to more than 800 academic publications and 21 book chapters. Professor Ganguly has received 9 international and more than 114 national awards for his immensely valuable contribution to the medical sciences. Thank you, Dr. Ganguly. Please.
If we have my slides, somebody should put my slides on. Somebody should put my slides on. Well, I'm not seeing it in here. So Mr. Chonkar. But do I have these slides here?
Not on this.
I should have this here, no? Slides will come here, not here. Should come on the laptop also. So by the time it comes, I will like to give you few stories. That one of the food safety has always been a huge issue at all time. It has been a public health issue, and it was debated by the communities and people all the time. So one of the major things in my life which I had done, that the first issue which I had to face on the food safety, apart from lathyrus or the Argemone mexicana in the oil, sanguine and and hydroxysanguine, was the caramelized carbonated caramelized drinks. There was an issue that there could be pesticides, and they must have come there from the sugars, because sugars are agricultural products. And I was given the task by Mr. Sharad Pawar, at that time chair of the parliamentary committee, to solve this issue. It was a humongous task. Even the CDC didn't have the standard methods, but we did it, and we ultimately were able to show that these do not pose health hazard. However, we said that companies should take care of not polluting the water sources which they use in their area. So with this background, and so when Miss Indira Nui came to meet me when I was waiting with Health Minister New York, Mr. Bloomberg, because at that time Health Minister was on the for the tobacco alleviation, and Mr. Bloomberg's major emphasis was on this, and we requested Miss Nui that please introduce nutritive drink repertoire in the non-nutritive entertainment drink, and she agreed. And to her credit, she introduced in the Pepsi brand at least some drinks which had a nutritive value, and some food products which has nutritive value. So the second major issue which I faced was myself and Dr. Mashelkar. We were in the parliamentary committee, before parliamentary committee, to set up the FSSAI. And we were able to convince also the drug controller's office, but we were able to convince, and the FSSAI was set up. The third major milestone in my life was that I chaired the first Apex committee of FSSAI and was able to put up a lot of standards and monographs for the food safety. And at that time I was also vice president of Ayush and also chairman of the Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission. So all these three in some or other were associated with some of the gray areas, and we are happy that most of those gray areas were covered. So the sweeteners, first taste of the non-sugar sweeteners which I encountered was when the monosodium glutamate, which is also known as Ajinomoto, this came into picture that this is not healthy for the kids who eat Chinese food, and the safety of monosodium glutamate was discussed in a very large fashion. When this was being discussed, then in the Mysore unit of the CSIR, which was headed by Prakash at that time, they convened a meeting for the hazards of the aspartic acid and glutamic acid. Both are known as excitosomes. So there was a lot of discussion there that aspartic acid, if it is taken, or glutamic acid taken in large amount, they activate the NMDA receptor. There is surge of calcium, and the NMDA receptor is destroyed. There is kynuuric acid which is produced, and there could be brain damage. But when we examined everything, we found that the NOEL and the LD50 and the amount which is consumed or which has been recommended for aspartame-like products, which are phenylalanine and aspartic acid mixture, was baseless. It was not actually correct. So I will like to assure you that since 1982, huge number of reviews have been undertaken to look at the safety of all the non-nutritive sweeteners. None of the regulatory bodies in the world have any problem. These are, whether it is European regulatory body, whether it is US FDA, whether it is FSSAI, nobody has any problem. Recently, in 1923, aspartame is going again in a review. So 1982, there were reviews. I could go on giving you the timelines of how they were examined, and every time they passed. Only once in 1975, the saccharin was withdrawn because there was something that some of the rats had perhaps cancerous tendency with the saccharin. And then when actual studies were carried out, it was found there is no association with cancer. Particularly, there was some problem with the bladder cancer. There was no association with cancer and saccharin. And that temporary ban was again withdrawn. So those who are sitting in this audience should be absolutely happy to know that all the non-sugar sweeteners are at the moment approved products. There are no issue with the safety except some rare diseases, like if you have a rare disease which you have phenylketonuria or something like that, you might have to be careful. Or if it is infant, you may have to be careful for a pregnant mother, only for some of them, but otherwise there is no issue in the amount which has been prescribed. So all the lower, they have been prescribed in the form of ADI and ADR, as all the food products are assessed. So there is no issue as far as safety is concerned. The real issue came up with the public health issue when WHO created a guidelines. I don't think people have really read between the lines of the guidelines. WHO never talked about banning these. There was a labeling. This was a labeling issue. So when you put up what was the labeling issue was this, that you cannot claim that if you take sugar substitute, your obesity will go. So if you really consume black forest cake or rabdi with the sweetener, you are going to get, because sweeteners are low calorie, low energy products. You have to use them as such. And if you take lot of calories and lot of fat and saturated fat and other things, then you are going to get weight. So you are not protected for obesity. But if you are controlled, you are leading a controlled lifestyle. If you are taking non-sugar sweeteners, you will lose weight. Whatever studies are there, it's not a huge weight loss, but you will lose weight. Then the other thing which came up was that you can't say that it will protect you from the non-communicable disease. That is also very right, because non-communicable diseases are multifactorial. You may have hypertension, you may have diabetes, you may have high fat, you may have a thrombotic disorder, you may have a disorder with the folate and other metabolism. So there are a huge number of other, and you may have stress. So if you say that you are taking sweeteners and you are protected from the non-communicable diseases, that's not true. So this was essentially a labeling exercise, and those who are wiser and who have read it correctly, you have to just educate the people and communities how you could get the best advantage of these sweeteners. Let me show you few slides. I have to इसमें स्लाइड कहाँ से आएगा? Okay,
This is
laptop is not. I will have to change my spectacle. Anyway, then you will have to see my back a lot, because Vicky is not technology savvy. Okay, I can then. In the slide like this. Okay. Okay. So one of the things in the food safety is the FIA analysis. FIA is a food intake assessment analysis, is a scientific method to evaluate the consumption of food and nutrients in a population. So this is the real issue here. It helps in understanding dietary patterns and their impact on public health. FIA analysis provides valuable data for policy making and guideline development. Accurate FIA analysis is crucial for assessing the use of the non-sugar sweeteners. So here I will like to give you an example. Like one of the things when we were using the caramelized and non-carbonated caramelized drinks, we had to also assess that how much is taken by the people here. And to our surprise, per person per head, it was 12 milliliter of this was taken in India at that time. So policy implication was very, very clear. However, the policy implication was this, that since these have 10 to 12% sugar, don't push it on the children in the school. So that came out as a policy. So FIA analysis becomes very, very critical and important. In the non-sweetener sugars, the amount which has been really prescribed, they are safe, but there are no major policy issue, but policy issue is now needed to provide, to allay the fears of the communities, as well as provide them appropriate information so that they could use these sugars appropriately. So my next slide is that in May 2023, the World Health Organization came up with these recommendations. So I've already talked about this, so I will move to the next slide. So type of the different sugars and sweeteners. There are several types of non-sugar sweeteners. Popular options in aspartame, sucralose, stevia, and saccharin. Each sweetener has different properties uses. In the whole of the Europe, majority of the sweet, those tablets which come in 1000 in a particular cassette, and you press it, one or two come out. So in Europe, this was one of the most controversial non-sugar sweetener, one of the first ones. But this is so sugar alcohol, artificial sweeteners, naturally derived low-calorie sweeteners like stevia and monk fruit are the ones which are under discussion. Now the science of this is, I will tell you a little bit about these. So in the since this aspartame is a non-saccharide sweetener, it is adaptable. It is a dipeptide. I told you it was phenylalanine aspartic acid, and these amino acids are natural constituents of all protein-containing food. Aspartame is a common additive diet beverages and other things. So aspartame is also in a goes by various brand name. I'm not going to talk about those brand names, but it was discovered by James M. Shatner in 1905. It was expected to reduce obesity rates and help people with diabetes. The following authorities have confirmed that aspartame is safe. The WHO first expert, JCFA, which is a important organization, US Food Safety and European Food Safety. On the right side of the screen, you will find some of the concerns, but all these concerns have been taken care of. Now, in the saccharin is a non-nutritive artificial sweetener that is about 500 times. Saccharin is made in a lab by oxidizing the chemical toluene sulfonamide or phthalic anhydride. It looks like white crystalline powder. Saccharin is used as a sugar substitute because it doesn't contain any calories or carbs. It can be sprinkled on the food. Saccharin has a bitter or metallic aftertaste, but if you only take it in a larger amount. This was actually withdrawn at one given time, and then it was reintroduced after appropriate assessment. So it was withdrawn because of fear of a cancer, but it is no longer a very important thing. Some risks which were identified, that in a chronic consumption there might be kidney injury, there might be headache. So if you have migraine, don't take it. So possible blood sugar regulation problems, but at this given moment, and the gut bacteria imbalance. Now here I might like to say that this is an issue which we need to frontally address, because now we know that our gut microbiome control all of our body functions. Now, one of the things where they use as a carbon source of energy is sugar. The non-nutritive sugar or the sugars which are synthesized, they cannot provide that. So this was one of the things which was researched very strongly in the recent times. And that fear has been allayed because in some form or other people end up having carbs and sugars which take care of the need of the microbiome. But more studies are needed in this area. So I must say that there is not a settled issue, but at this given moment, few of the recent studies which I went through, this is not an issue. Only today there was one from North Carolina. She presented this in the morning, and this was okay. So the stevia, which is a native of Paraguay and Brazil, is one of the very popular one. This is a non-nutritive, meaning it has no calories, carbohydrate, and artificial ingredients, and it has gone through several 2 or 3 analysis. It doesn't have the sugar alcohols that much. It is taken care of. Its purity is assured, and this plant product is used very frequently. The sucralose is a reduced curd. It is not absorbed. The other ones are also not absorbed. So the sucralose has been very popular, but it served the lactulose and sucralose serve another purpose. That sometimes in the children in India they have a problem of the tight junction because some suffer from malabsorption. So if it enters blood and if you get it in the urine, then there is some absorption defect in the person. But sucralose is not supposed to be absorbed, and it has also passed through all safety issues. So the importance of WHO guidelines I have already said. It is a labeling thing, but few issues will have to be settled. Now, review of scientific evidence supporting safe use of non-sugar sweeteners. So these need evaluation, and these are some of the studies which have been done. When this has been done appropriately, like when you do the food thing, you will have to provide people the food from one source, and you have to see that you have to put dietary auditing and others. So whatever major studies has been done, it has been whether it is odds ratio for reduction of the weight or the blood sugar management or what happens in the children's obesity or the cancer, you find it has an advantage. But when you let it loose in the population and don't inform the population that how to use the non sugar sweeteners, then there is a problem. When there is so much misconception which is around. So one of the things which is very, very powerful is that communities need to be informed about the product, how to use it appropriately and how not to use it appropriately, because it has become a very strong commercial market of having everything with a sweetener and passing it out, non-sugar sweetener, and passing it out as you are eating something which is okay. It is not okay when you go to a mithai shop and buy lot of mithais with non-calorie sweetener and then console yourself that you have taken non-calorie sweetener, not sugar. Sugar is so small amount of that. And if you are, say, concentrated milk product, you get sugar in any case. They are sweet. So with this, I will come to one more slide and finish it. That these are the different concentrations which have been prescribed. These concentrations have been done with lot of animal experiments, lot of ADR and ADI analysis, and people should be also, the label should have it that how much concentration it is. Like when you get your blood sugar report or when you get your electrolyte report, they give you the range, they give you if it is crossing the range, and they give you the other things. So labeling, we need to look at it, and these are concentrations which are, even if you take the double or triple concentration, that will be okay. So I am finishing my talk. So it has got, if taken, that this is something which is very, very important. That dental plaque. For dental plaque, you need to have sugar. Without sugar, dental plaque can't form. So in children, uh, I don't recommend that you give non sweetener sugars to children. But this is a thought that the sugar intake in children need to be controlled and oral hygiene methods should be recommended. So one may like to push non sugar sweeteners in children. I will not push it in them, but they don't need it. They are growing individuals. So although it will save them from the dental caries, however, there are other methods to teach them oral hygiene and prevent dental caries. So I think the FSSI is reviewing again, and I think there will be wiser people there and who will take a wise decision. And there is one more issue. When I was in FSI Apex committee, there is another issue, which is an economy of the country and overall saving the industry of the country. So when we were setting up the standards in tea, there is iron shaving. Sri Lanka has allowed 500. We were putting up 125. Sri Lanka is our one of the major competitor for the tea market. So we said that please don't destroy our tea industry. This is safe. Only thing is that this should be very, very safe. So in this fashion, when we provided limits for the the caramelized carbonated drinks, we didn't touch the mango pulp and mango at that time, because we didn't have technologies. Now we have technologies. At that time we didn't have technologies, and our whole mango industry, the food processing additional secretary sitting here, our whole mango industry would have been destroyed. So policy making is a different cup of tea. You take policies, when you take policies, you look at that whether our industry gets affected or not, but health is the paramount. The health should be preserved. With this, I thank everyone again, and these slides are available. There is much more in these slides, but in my allotted time, I have to finish and thank all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ganguly, for sharing your thoughts and unraveling certain facts about the non-nutritive sweeteners. It was really great learning from your experience and wisdom. Our next speaker is Dr. Ashley Roberts. He's the president of AR Toxicology Incorporation. Dr. Robert has published nearly 100 peer-reviewed manuscripts, book chapters, posters, papers, primarily in the area related to food ingredient safety, mechanism of toxicity, and preclinical, clinical pharmacokinetics. He has presented as many international scientific symposia. Dr. Robert worked for nearly 20 years as a senior vice president for Cantox Intertech in the area of scientific and regulatory affairs, and before that 10 years for a multinational food companies. I welcome Dr. Robert to give a special address. He's an expert in the area of non-nutritive sweeteners. It would be a pleasure to hear. Thank you, sir.
Sorry about the confusion my laptop created here, but one that is available on Zoom now, or not to worry. Technical issues. So maybe I'll stand over here. Today I'm going to give these as per my perspective. I've been over chart started. So I started back in the early 80s working on low and no calorie sweeteners with a Professor Rennick, who is one of the grandfathers of toxicology and has sat on many expert committees around the world, including the JECFA. I initially started work, as Dr. Ganguly said, looking at the potential effects of saccharin on bladder cancer. And as he rightly pointed out, saccharin is not a bladder carcinogen for humans, and it was learnt that it was very specific to rats, and that was discovered by Professor Sam Cohen out of the University of Nebraska in the United States. But as you can see from my timeline here, I've been working on these products for over 40 years, and I was involved directly in the safety development of sucralose, which we've also heard about, and Advantame, which is one of the latest additions that has been through the Joint Expert Committee for Food. I've also been working for the last 20 years nearly in supporting the safety of steviol glycosides. And as you all know, these are natural sweeteners that are extracted from the plant Stevia rebaudiana, and subsequent to the extraction of steviol glycosides from the plant, it was determined that sweetness didn't only come from stevia side, there were many other glycosides present in the leaf. And following detailed analysis by a number of companies, it was determined that there was over 60 different steviol glycosides that are present in the leaf. So while the initial approvals supporting the safety of steviol glycosides occurred around the period of 2008, which is when the Joint Expert Committee gave its opinion on the safety, since that time, been determined that a number of these minor glycosides that occur in the leaf have better sensory characteristics than the stevia side that occurs within the plant. But because these minor glycosides occur in the leaf at such low levels, it's not commercially viable to extract these and produce a sweetener that can then be used in foods and beverages by the industry. So what this led to was the industry developing novel manufacturing techniques, including bioconversion and fermentation, which I will go into in a little more detail tomorrow during my talk. But it was the development of those specific techniques which allowed for the approvals of these very specific rebaudiosides that occur in the stevia plant. Based upon the fact that we now have different technologies that are able to manufacture sweeteners or no calorie sweeteners, this led to my working with the Joint Expert Committee on Food, developing a framework for supporting the safety of these ingredients that are produced by these new. And in fact, the Joint Expert Committee on Food, the JECFA, adopted the framework for the evaluation of steviol glycosides back in 2021. And this framework has been reviewed and adopted by many countries now throughout the world. Subsequent to the framework, I have worked on the JECFA evaluation for aspartame, which you've probably all have come to read about over the last several months. In fact, I was instrumental in putting the monograph together that was sent to JECFA for their evaluation. I can tell you that there was over 1,000 publications which need to be reviewed, which took a tremendous amount of time, which leads to the understanding that aspartame must be one of the most thoroughly tested of all food additives on Earth. So what I would like to point out to you today is part of the evolution of low and no calorie sweeteners is that within the first 30 years, so from 1980 up until around 2013 when Advantame was approved, most of the sweeteners that were developed I will call artificial sweeteners. I don't like to use that term, but these sweeteners are pretty much man-made, so they're made in the laboratory from a synthetic source. Since that time, since the early 2000s, the industry and the development of sweeteners has moved away from artificial to those more natural sweeteners. As I mentioned, we're now consuming steviol glycosides that come from the plant. And now there's also a number of new sweeteners that I'm also working on that come from other plant sources. And these sweeteners are either proteins or ingredients like steviol glycosides that come from either fruits or berries. So as time goes by and things evolve, it's apparent that these new sweeteners that come from plants or from berries, which are mainly protein sweeteners, are not available in commercial level, which will enable them to be used in food and beverages. So again, this leads to the fact that these ingredients need to be manufactured by new technologies, such as fermentation. So the whole evolution process from artificial through to natural is requiring the development of new technologies in which we can manufacture these. This allows us to work on, as I say, many different sweeteners that occur in nature, and there's some really interesting products that are out there. In fact, I've been lucky enough to work on a compound called miraculin, which comes from a little red berry, which is called a miracle fruit, hence the name miraculin. And while this product, this protein, is not sweet itself, it's able to change sour tasting materials into those that taste sweet. So I believe in the future, as we look for nature identical products that provide sweetness, maybe this will open the Holy Grail and we will find a sweetener that mimics sucrose or sugar more closely, would be a product that we'll be able to use without having concerns about the increase in calories. That, for attention.
you, Dr. Ashley, sharing your thoughts, and also was a need that for care about the query, correct, Nina? So that was wonderful. I hope that comes out as a safe food and a common food for future. With this, now may I request the Tanoj Kumar Jhaji, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Food Processing Industries, Government of India, give us inaugural address symposium.
Good afternoon, everyone. In fact, good evening. And first of all, let me thank you for being present here, and thank Vicky for organizing this event and inviting me for this purpose. It's my pleasure to be here today at the Vicky International Symposium on Unlocking Reformulations and Unravelling the Science of Sweeteners. Me being from a very generic background, having almost no experience in the sector, I'm delighted to be here amongst you all who are experts in the sector, and especially Professor Ganguly and Dr. Roberts, who are here, and they have given a wonderful presentation. I don't know what I mean about you, how much I mean you would have got impressed, but as far as I am concerned, I don't know, except for eating these sweeteners from time to time. I don't have any experience about what goes into it, what are the health benefits or adversities out of this. So for me it was really a very nice experience to hear them, and it must be a learning experience for many of you too. I hope this symposium would be remembered as a significant milestone in the collective journey towards fostering innovation, addressing global health concerns, and navigating the intricate world of food science. The theme of this symposium encapsulates the essence of our shared commitment to promoting healthier choices in the realm of food and beverages. In a world where our food habits are dynamic and are ever evolving, the culinary preferences are diversifying, and the resultantly health challenges are becoming increasingly complex. It's not only relevant but also crucial that we explore reformulations and the science behind these sweeteners. As our societies grapple with the consequences of changing food habits, lack of physical activity, and the fast pace of modern life, it becomes imperative for us to adapt and innovate responsibly. Over the course of the next 2 days, today and tomorrow, the symposium will discuss issues related to the need for food formulations, role of sweeteners, scientific evidence behind these, the issues related to labeling, and other related issues. As we explore the various reformulations and sweeteners, we acknowledge their potential to revolutionize our approach to food formulation and consumption. I am informed, and we heard from the two experts, that regulatory authorities across nations, including India, the US, the countries of the EU, their regulatory bodies, and the scientific organizations such as Codex, they have attested to the safety of these formulations and sweeteners, which are amongst the most thoroughly researched ingredients worldwide. In fact, the international authorities have attested to the sweetener safety for all population groups, including for the children. Yes, there are some exceptions, and we need to be aware of the same. Like it was told about the doses or the quantum. While the scientific community has extensively studied and affirmed the safety of most of these sweeteners, there exist misconceptions and perceptions that require thoughtful consideration, scientific deliberations. I believe this symposium would provide a platform for discussing these issues among the researchers, policymakers, dietitians, food scientists, health professionals, and industry leaders to engage in meaningful discussions, share their insights, and contribute to a nuanced understanding of the subject. FICCI has hosted this international symposium, recognizing the significance of informed choices in the food industry. The aim is to foster a collaborative environment where knowledge is shared, innovations are celebrated, and most importantly, where the well-being of consumers remains at the forefront of our efforts. The Ministry of Food Processing Industries has played an important role in supporting the Indian food processing industry through various forms of assistance, and it helps in value addition of agricultural products and enhances shelf life of food products, thereby reducing food wastage. As regards this sector, I don't recall we do have something which has been done earlier, but any further support, any support type of assistance which can be provided by the ministry, we may discuss it, and if need be, we can take it further. Thank you everyone for being here. Your presence here today reflects a shared commitment to advancing the frontiers of knowledge and promoting healthier, safer, and more informed choices in the global food landscape. I hope you would delve into the science behind the use of these sweeteners and discuss various aspects of its application in the food in the sessions that follow. Thank you everyone, and thank you Fiki for inviting me here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanuji, for your encouraging words and taking time out today for this important symposium which we are holding till the next day. Thank you, Professor Ganguly, once again for your wisdom and the kind words, and thank you, Doctor, for sharing your thoughts and also certain new things. With this, we come to an end to inaugural session. Now may I request Dr. Kavita, please, if you can come, and we have a small token of interest, appreciation, sir, for you, Dr. Kavita. This we come to an end to the inaugural session. Sanuji would like to leave now. Yes, sir. Allow us 5 minutes to set the stage for the next program. Welcome once again. Now we move to our next session, which is on the panel discussion. The title is The Need for Food Reformulation in India for Healthier Choices, Role of Sweeteners, Recent Developments, the Totality of Scientific Evidence. We have the pleasure of having Ms. Sabira Ali with us today, the Senior Manager Public Affairs, Food Industry Asia. May I request Ms. Sabira, please come on the dais. A big round of applause for her. Thank you. Ms. Sabira is the Senior Manager for Public Affairs at Food Industry Asia, based out of Singapore. She leads the policy, research, and advocacy efforts on health and nutrition alongside sustainability impacting Asia. Sabira has fostered a strong stakeholder relationship with the key regional experts to facilitate collaborative dialogue and action. She has led FIA partnership with the World Food Programme, Naidol University, and the regional health ministries to improve nutrition education in parts of ASEAN. She has been with FIA since 2015. Now may I request Dr. Kavita Ramaswamy, Joint Director, FSSAI, Science and Codex. Applause, please. Thank you. I request Dr. Pulkit Mathur. Come on the stage, please. Professor, Head of the Department, Food and Nutrition, Food Technology, Lady Evan College, University of Delhi. And I request Dr. V. Sudarshan Rao, former Director, National Institute of Nutrition. Please come on the stage. Request Dr. Jasveer Singh, Director and Head, MAT Regulatory Affairs, International Flavors and Fragrance. I request Dr. Rajendra Dobriyal, Director, Scientific and Regulatory Affairs, India and South. We have Dr. Shruti Kawadi, lead pharmacologist and toxicokinetic expert, USFDA and WHO advisor expert, JACFA, who is joining online from US. Do we have Dr. Shruti? Are you joined online? Are you able to hear me? Can you confirm?
Can you all hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Shruti. Could you hear me?
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me here.
It's such a pleasure to hear you. Now we are beginning with our panel discussion. So I'll give the floor to Ms. Sabira Ali.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chopra, and good afternoon, everyone. It's really nice to see a full house again, meeting some of the faces that I saw last year while I was in Delhi, and some new faces this afternoon. I have with me a very distinguished panel of experts next to me, and a very tough job of, asking them the hard questions of, understanding how sweeteners play an important role in reformulation, science behind it, and also just understanding the developments that had taken place. Thank you, Dr. Chonka, for making introductions of the panel. So without further ado, I will just give you a short introduction and then we'll go into opening remarks with the. So just very quickly, you may be aware that Asian consumers have been shifting towards healthier lifestyles. They are voting to have access to products that are low in fat, sugar, and salt, and also from an economic perspective as well, food reformulation, product innovation is seen as is seen as a effective nutrition intervention in order to tackle the growing prevalence of obesity and its associated non-communicable diseases. In fact, when we look back at 2018, the United Nations Political Declaration on NCD called on the private sector to strengthen its reformulation agenda, to revise its products that are high in fat, sugar, and salt. And this was very much reaffirmed by the Southeast Asian leaders or the ASEAN leaders back in 2021 of October, calling for more revision for the food and beverages to make them healthier. And heeding these calls, and also with the growing policy pressures that we are currently facing with the rising rates of obesity and related diseases, the food industry has very much been working to deliver solutions through innovation and reformulation. And this is often carried out behind closed doors, conducted in a phased manner so that we can ensure consumer acceptance for the long term. And there's also various routes for reformulation and the use of variety of techniques which can be employed to facilitate this approach. It can be done by revising an existing product recipe, by removing, reducing, or even replacing ingredients through fortification, and even using new technologies or processes to improve the product as well as the nutrition quality. One such approach that has been adopted for decades now is that is unfortunately under quite a bit of scrutiny is the use of non-nutritive sweeteners or low non-caloric sweeteners as a reformulation tool in order to reduce the amount of sugar that is being used in beverages. Such sweeteners have been widely used as an alternative to sugar, as the previous speakers had already mentioned. It has very much undergone very rigorous testing processes, has been approved by various global and local food authorities, reaffirming and attesting to the safety of that ingredient. And it's very much also indicative of how this ingredient is safe for all population groups, including children and pregnant women. But despite all of these safety and health benefits around LNCS, there are still misconceptions that are ongoing that continue to emerge due to scientific research publications that may lack rigor and also attention-grabbing headlines from the media as well. But with this climate, how are businesses now moving forward with their reformulation agenda, and how are they working towards accelerating their efforts? So as part of today's discussion, I will be going into specific details around why reformulation is really important, the role of sweeteners in the process, and also looking into the scientific evidence of sweeteners, particularly in view of the recent developments. So with that, I'm going to kick off with some opening remarks, and each of my panelists with me would have about 2 minutes to respond to, getting an understanding of why, basically, what are some of the factors that stakeholders need to take into consideration when it comes to reformulating products, as well as why are tools such as sweeteners, for instance, really important in the process. And I'm going to start off with Dr. Kavita, Director for the FSSAI, to start.
Yeah, thank you, Sabira. Good evening, all of you. I thank Vicky for this wonderful opportunity given to me to deliberate on this issue that is currently diverting all our attention in the recent past, that is the non-sugar sweetener. Yeah, coming to your query, Sabira, food safety, it's a shared responsibility. It involves the collective effort of the government, the policy makers, the industry, academicians, and consumer. So it's a collaborative effort, and everyone has a role to play in it. So if you want me to revisit the past, when the FSS Act was enacted in 2006 and the authority was made in 2008, that time we have to adopt all the orders and act related to food safety. We were supposed to bring it under the ambit of FSS Act. So that time we had a very rigid standards to say, because we have to go with what is there available with the Prevention of Food Adulteration Act. So we have taken that as such. So now if we look into the past 15 years, the developments that is happening, we are also harmonizing the things that is happening globally on par with the available global standards. So risk assessment is an ongoing process. So yesterday's standard will not be applicable for today, and today's will not be in future. So as a regulator, we have to note that what is cropping up, what is the emerging issue, what are the recent developments, what is the demand of the industry and the consumer preference as well. So in that note, I would say we have to have the flexibility to accommodate the reformulation, and with the collective effort of all the stakeholders.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kavita. So I'm just now going to move to Dr. Mathur to share any additional thoughts that you might have.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for having me here. So I'm going to say talk from the point of view of a nutritionist. The world over, there is this call for eating more natural, eating more minimally processed foods. So when we look at reformulation, let's not look at a very simplistic formula that I'm just going to remove the sugar and I'm just going to put the non-nutritive sweetener into the food. So for instance, in a cookie, if I just remove the sugar, I'm decreasing the calories, but it still is high in fat. So we have to now, together look for, so the message that comes out for the food industry is, look at the scientific developments which are happening in the field of nutrition and where people are moving. Because, if you just reformulate by removing one thing and adding another, it may again not be a product which is so widely, accepted, because the consumer is asking for that minimally processed thing which is close to, natural ingredients. So in the end of this, this whole exercise of reformulation, let's not come out with another ultra processed food which has now more chemicals just because you were trying to remove some of the natural things and put more replacers into it. The other point that I want to make is that in this reformulation, especially with regard to non-nutritive sweeteners, if we have too many foods, so everybody decides to reformulate and everybody decides to remove the sugar and add the NNS, then also let's have a balance and a lookout for what is happening to the total exposure of the population to a non-nutritive sweetener. So as of now, whatever studies there are, they are showing we are much below the ADI. But just look at a scenario where everybody changes to a non-nutritive sweetener, we might exceed the ADI. So who's doing the exposure assessment? Who's monitoring the intake? So that this has to be done in a very balanced manner, looking at what are the foods that we are looking at to reformulate. So is it reformulation only, or is it coming out with newer food products which don't need so many of these additional sweeteners which have to be added? Another message goes out to the scientists, because see, the WHO report that we are talking about, it is ultimately ending at a note where they say we don't have enough data to say either ways. So we need these studies to be done in a much more scientific manner, and that would really help to allay whatever fears that are circulating among the consumers. Because if a body comes out with, we still don't know, we are not very sure, we need more studies, obviously it is going to create a kind of a panic situation among the consumers. So we really do need to generate strong evidence, which is through very well planned studies, and look at individual sweeteners separately, because again, if you just club them all together, that's where the data comes out as we don't know, we are not sure. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Mathur, for that. Some very interesting points that we are going to unpack very, very shortly. But I'd like to turn to Dr. Singh, who's with the IFF, to share his thoughts from an industry perspective.
Sure. So I think the only job of a business is to do business, and they can do business if they respond to the demands of society. And one of these demands, and very paradoxically, is this whole idea of health, which has been shifting its goalposts so often. I have grown up with the idea of health when desi ghee used to be the best food, which no longer seems to be holding good. So in that shifting goalpost, how do you respond with products and options which are there to satisfy not only the taste demands from consumers, but also the health demands of consumers? And that's a challenge that businesses continue to grapple with, and that's where a lot of us have to depend on strategies of reformulation or introducing new formulation using new technologies. And that journey will continue, and in that journey, industry will continue to depend on scientific developments which are coming from the regulatory authorities, from the scientific community, so that we don't end up doing something which is more harmful than the benefit that we actually wanted to deliver to the consumer. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dr. Singh. Really right on time. I'd now like to move to Dr. Rao to share his thoughts, please.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, good evening, and at the outset, I would like to thank the organizers for giving the opportunity. So, I start with much more fundamental, trying to say that now we are saying that now our GDP is fifth largest economy, right? So that is actually we are talking. So along with that, so NCDs are also matching with that. Actually, that Chelan that we are talking about in economy is also in NCDs, non-communicable diseases, and that is the leading cause of deaths now. It was not there earlier, and that is the and second thing is the nutrition transition that is happening in India is much more faster than what we were expecting earlier. What we have seen in probably US and Europe is much more faster in India, and so the reason is that actually we are having poor quality diets, and it is very well established that having more incomes will not improve your nutrition. There is absolutely no link between your purchasing power and nutrition. So that's the reason why where we have to create an environment where when somebody goes to supermarket, you should be able to see better. The nutritional quality should become the choice of the consumers. So now we are supposed to be giving the choice to the consumers, and that's where you are supposed to provide an environment in the industry to try to give this reformulate and try to give this nutritional quality foods, which otherwise, because it all depends upon what is available in the market. People will be always looking for a choice, and if you provide that better choice in terms of providing these reformulations by actually removing sugar. In fact, I would like to tell you that this year dietary guidelines we are going to release, sugar has been removed from the dietary guidelines. So earlier 2011 when we had dietary guidelines, sugar was part of the balanced diet. Now we don't require sugar at all because that will anyway come with carbohydrates that we are consuming. Okay, that has been removed from that. And whereas salt and fat we require, there the limits are required, but whereas sugar can be totally eliminated because you will otherwise get the carbohydrates which actually convert glucose, which are required for your body functions. I think these are few initial these things. What I finally said, more to the consumers. You try to see from where your sugar, salt, and also fat is saturated fat is coming, and then mostly in India it is still home kitchens that are supplying. And okay, so when you actually buy the foods from outside, of course, definitely you see the nutrition labeling and try to understand what you require. The food will not tell you what you require. Food will tell you what it has. So the choice is yours. With that, I thank.
Thanks, Dr. Rao. We'll circle back to some of the points that you've mentioned. Now, moving on to Mr. Rajendra Dobaria.
Thanks, Savita. So I will make quick points from it. My first point, I'm taking reference from what is written on the back of Gandhi, and I'm just the word poor with confusion. Then it's like trustees should regard themselves as trustee and servant. And my first point is about consumer. I think consumer is extremely important point. And when I say consumer, then it is the consumer who demands actually the prices of products, whether foods and beverages. Now, Ganguly Savar sitting here, ICMR has released a report sometime earlier this year that we have 105 million diabetic population and 130 million pre-diabetic population. Adds to around. That's the kind of, oh, sorry. Am I audible? There is some problem here. I'll move. Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. So the point I was making that it's not the general healthy population which may choose whether they want to have a sugar-based products or not. It is basically that we do have a responsibility in industry to give choices to them. Yeah, so that's I mean, we cannot ignore that kind of population. Then of course there's an emerging population which feels that they need to control their calories, and therefore we have a response. I think this should have been checked before the conference. So the point I'm making is we have a responsibility to provide the entire range to the consumer and to enable and empower consumer to pick up their choices. So that's one thing, and therefore if we have to use the safe and well established sweeteners there, thanks to regulators all across, and certainly thanks to our own FSSAI, they have enabled that doing more and consistently have been enabling that, so that industry can give those choices. Second point is, lot of has been discussed about safety of ingredients. So while we have much wiser speakers here actually coming up tomorrow, that what is the kind of safety which goes behind these molecules, these sweeteners. But I wanted to put a little bit here actually a point about safety, the responsibility of the industry. So in my opinion, right, consumer need to be conscious of safety. All our scientific community and regulators need to be conscious of safety, but above all, industry need to be conscious of safety. Look at an example. I work for Coca-Cola, for example, and I have several colleagues working here, big industries like us. Just imagine a situation where one of our product in market is considered unsafe by a regulator or a consumer. What kind of reputation actually we'll have to manage? So why would you do anything from industry which makes our product unsafe? And therefore, I feel if any ingredient is scientifically proven that it is unsafe or it may be unsafe, obviously industry is not going to touch it. So we use only those ingredients where absolutely there is no doubt that it is safe for use. Third point quickly I wanted to make, because NUGAG reports and all also mentioned about being claims about these LNCs and also Sabira. I don't think there is any responsible corporate citizen who is making a weight management claim, for example, for saccharin or for aspartame and all. Nobody makes that. We only say that we are replacing the sugar for the consumer to choose from a wider range of products. I will end here.
Thank you very much, Rajendra, for that. Not forgetting our panelist who's joined us virtually, Dr. Shruti. If you can hear us, would you be able to share some thoughts on the topic before we get into the specifics, please?
Absolutely, I can, Sabira. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Let me begin by thanking Vicky and all the organizers for making it happen. My apologies because I'm not attending in person, but nonetheless, this is a real pleasure to be with you all today. Just for some opening remarks on this discussion from my side, let me begin with a disclaimer. The views and opinions that I'm expressing today are mine, and they may not fully represent the position and policies of United States Food and Drug Administration. But with that, as a regulator, I feel like it's important to keep in mind that there are three elements of safety evaluation of food additives, including non-nutritive sweeteners, that are truly important. And that's risk assessment, risk management, as well as risk communication. None of this changes. This applies to all food additives. And as we perform risk assessment, I feel it's very important to take into consideration the totality of scientific evidence or the totality of scientific data. It's basically the same thing. I know we hear these terms in different meetings and in different reports, but it essentially means that there were a lot of data on these substances when they were developed. And as time goes by, new data are bound to come out. So how do you tie all of that together and make a safety decision based on the available data is critical. More data would be coming out in the future, and that's a given. That is not going to change. But I think when we read all these reports and evaluations that are being completed across the world, first and foremost, it's important to know what the purpose of that evaluation was, because depending on the organization, the purpose of each evaluation is also different. And based on that, it's important to then, when you are conducting your own evaluation, to look at the data through your own lens and draw a safety conclusion. I know we are going to get more into the WHO evaluation and other related topics in a few minutes. So I'm going to stop here. And I thank you all again for your time and consideration. And if you have any questions later for me, then I'll be happy to address those.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shruti. So you're going to be the first person that I'm going to ask the specific question to, since you mentioned about the recent evaluations that have taken place over the last couple of months, particularly on aspartame. You were one of the experts that sat on the JACFA panel, and we would really like to understand from you how the recent developments around the IARC JACFA evaluation on aspartame, as well as the WHO guideline on on non-nutritive sweeteners, has impacted this international assessment. How has that impacted, discussions that may have been going on in the local markets? How has that changed the regulatory landscape, do you think? Would you be able to share some insights?
Absolutely. So earlier this year, there were 2 WHO evaluations completed on aspartame. First was by the International Agency for Research on Cancer, or IARC, and this evaluation was completed early June. And then the Joint Expert FAO-WHO Committee on Food Additives met in Geneva end of June to early July to evaluate the safety of aspartame. The outcomes of both meetings were released together on June 14th. When I was speaking a few minutes ago, I'd mentioned that it's very important to understand the purpose of each evaluation. IARC's evaluation was conducted to essentially determine what class of IARC, like the IARC classification, aspartame would be falling into. And aspartame was classified in group 2B. That's possibly carcinogenic to humans. Now, for JACFA, the way the committee evaluated the available data was the committee had previously evaluated aspartame in 1981. And since then, a lot of data had come out, especially the metabolism studies, and then the epidemiological studies, and the cancer bioassays. So the committee looked at all the data that were available, particularly the new data that had come out since the 1981 evaluation, and essentially evaluated the totality of scientific evidence. I also want to mention that committee had not conducted an exposure assessment for aspartame before. That had not been done in the 1981 evaluation. So in the 2023 evaluation at the recent meeting, the committee performed the exposure assessment of aspartame for the first time. Just to quickly summarize the conclusions of the meeting, the committee concluded that there was no convincing evidence from experimental data in animals or humans that aspartame caused adverse effects after ingestion. And this conclusion was underpinned by the determination that there was no systemic exposure to aspartame upon oral exposure, and its metabolites are identical to those derived from commonly consumed foods. There were no concerns for genotoxicity identified, and the committee also did not identify a concern for carcinogenicity. The committee evaluated the epidemiological studies and concluded that the evidence of association of aspartame consumption to the evaluated cancer and non-cancer endpoints in humans was not convincing. In 1981, the committee had established an ADI of 0 to 40 milligrams per kilogram body weight per day. And after reviewing the new data that had come out since then, the committee did not find any reason to change the ADI of aspartame. So it reaffirmed the ADI of 0 to 40 milligram per kilogram body weight per day. I'd mentioned that the committee had also conducted an exposure assessment of aspartame. So the committee calculated the exposure estimates, and the dietary exposure estimates of aspartame did not exceed its ADI. Therefore, the committee concluded that the dietary exposure to aspartame does not pose a health concern. These were two separate evaluations. They were both conducted by WHO, but the JECFA evaluation was a joint collaboration between FAO and WHO, and the IARC evaluation was essentially conducted to determine what class aspartame was going to fall into. Therefore, when people read the conclusions and then try to understand the evidence and what the data is showing, it's very important to understand the purpose of these two evaluations. They may seem like WHO evaluated aspartame and these were the conclusions, but basically these were two separate evaluations. And I think that's a very important point to keep in mind as you take into consideration the totality of evidence. And like I'd mentioned earlier, new data are always going to keep coming out. But when there is a time to make a safety determination and draw conclusions, those conclusions need to be drawn based on the totality of information available at the moment.
Thanks very much, Dr. Shruti. We're going to circle back to a couple of points in a minute. But before we do, I would like to turn to Dr. Kavita. With the evaluation coming out in July, how did the FSSAI respond to this, and what were some of the steps that the FSSAI had taken to ensure the safety of aspartame and also the broader category of sweets?
So, when the FSSAI noted that IARC and JECFA both are working, in complementary. The IARC will do the hazard identification, whereas JECFA will do the risk assessment. They will revisit the ADI that is previously given, and also, they do the exposure assessment. But then we started receiving several grievances from the stakeholders, from the consumer, so many parliamentary queries, and then media queries like whether it is a carcinogen and what India, FSSAI as a regulator, are we going to revise the ADI which is already existing in place, intermittent decision what we are going to make. So, to make a note, FSSAI has already harmonized the standards on par with the Codex GFSA, and aspartame is permitted in almost 63 subcategories of the food categories that is permitted in the FSSAI. It ranges from 300 milligram per kg to 10,000 milligram per kg. And also we have a very clear-cut label warning that has to be put up in the label, because individual sweeteners were analyzed we revisited in 2018. So accordingly we got to know, like previously they were warning like it is not to be recommended for phenylketonuria because of the congenital inability. They are not in a position to metabolize this. So we are continuing with the same warning. Also, we got some evidence like it may induce premature delivery. Also, it is not recommended for children having seizure disorder. So we made this warning like it is not for these three segments of the population: seizure, phenylketonuria, and pregnant and lactating mothers. So also we noted, as Shruti said, like there were no data available, and this time they have looked into the exposure assessment. Also, one thing which we have to note here is this 40 milligram per kg body weight. It is on par with EFSA also. US FDA is recommending a little more than that. This it is 50 milligram per kg body weight. So this is also derived from the NOAEL, that is 4000 milligram, and a 100-fold uncertainty factor is applied to this. So there is no harm. Also the US FDA have quoted like even if all the sugar is replaced with aspartame, so what will be the amount of aspartame will be consumed per day. So here we have to look into the intensity of the sweetener as well. So in that note, there is no harm in retaining the same. Also, we deliberated the issue with a team of experts in FSSAI from the nutrition panel, also the additive panel. And earlier we quoted like we'll come out with a conclusion, one JECFA and IARC come out with the evidence. Later we made a guidance note for the stakeholders and we uploaded it in our public domain. Like based on the JECFA evaluation, we will be retaining the ADI, what is there already existing. Also, wherever the provisions is there in the food categories, that is also will continue as such. And in respect to the WHO guidelines on non-sugar sweetener also, we noted that, and that recommendation in itself is a conditional recommendation. And they have not considered the South Asian population or Indian population. Our dietary pattern is entirely different. And there were more of a positive and negative correlation studies. Several factors were missing in the RCT, case control studies. So the certainty was very low. So in that case, we said we are not going to revise anything that is available, the recommendation that is currently available with the NSS, and we'll go ahead with what is available.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kavita, for that. So I think if I can probably just give you a brief recap before I move on to Dr. Rao and also Dr. Mathur around the communication of the science we are talking about, the two big guidelines that were recently launched in Q2 and Q3 of this year, the WHO new gag guidelines as well as the safety evaluation by IARC and JECFA on aspartame. Both Dr. Kavita and Dr. Shruti had highlighted, firstly, the evaluations had different purposes. Secondly, you need to read into the information quite clearly to understand whether or not it suits the needs of the local population, understand the exposure assessment and the dietary intakes of the local groups before we even consider applying those global guidelines or standards. And it's heartening to know that FSSAI had done its due diligence in making sure that the global guidelines offers a frame of reference, but it doesn't really fit within the Indian dietary guidelines, dietary intake, and also understandably so that the NSS consumption in India is quite low. And therefore, applying those alarming sort of statements and rules creates unnecessary attention and worry amongst the consumers in purchasing products that are already out there and they are familiar with. So with that, thank you both very much. But I'd like to turn to Dr. Rao first, and then Dr. Mathur, please feel free to add on. My question to the both of you is, just, with all of this scientific information out there, we understand some of the technicalities of what's being provided on those reports, but not so much for the layman. If they were to see a headline that says sweeteners may cause cancer, and they are just going to go off the bat and worry. Can I pass you? So how do you think, or maybe what are some of the steps that we as various groups of stakeholders that are here in the room today help consumers understand that science that is out there? How can we better communicate this information? So starting with you, Dr. Rao.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah, the communication, most important thing that is happening is that miscommunication. Okay, so actually Dr. Ganguly has actually opened it up. We started having some negative perception of artificial sweetness way back when saccharin was banned. That was banned for some time due to this cancer. The one study, the rat study that was actually has come, and from then onward there is some general, I am talking about from consumer point of view, they had a perception saying that artificial sweetness cause cancer. Okay, so that has to be actually removed from them. From then you have some information like what has come with aspartame that reinforces their understanding that there is some problem with the artificial sweetness. So that has to, we should be able to communicate to them, trying to say that how the entire process is taken. And I think I should tell you that when we are sitting in the scientific panel, the scientific panel is almost like EFSA or JECFA, of course, but it is under FSSAI, but still the same activity we do as a scientific panel. We do the risk assessment. There, no carcinogen, no additive is a carcinogen. The first thing that in safety, that carcinogens are not accepted as additives at all. That is, the genotoxicity of the particular chemical or additive is first tested, and then if it is genotoxic, that means it is a carcinogen. It actually is not considered as an additive at all. So whatever is happening with aspartame, probably non-carcinogenic, non-mutagenic, not genotoxic effects, which actually happened with saccharin, when they actually tried to see what is the mechanism of saccharin which actually caused that bladder cancer in rats. They found that that particular mechanism doesn't work in humans at all. So that study was not at all relevant for humans. Okay. Similarly, we actually, when we do the safety evaluation of additives, we do absorption, distribution, and metabolism and excretion. The entire thing is studied. Try to see that where exactly there is any issue with the particular additive. So all this is taken care, and that information has to go to the consumer. The transparency and also some communication has to go to the consumer, that we take all these precautions before any additive is actually. So now what happened with aspartame? FSSAI has immediately constituted a committee and try to look into this, and they have come out. Only thing is, we are not able to communicate. There should be some mechanism to communicate to the consumer that has been taken care and there is no issue. And in fact, if you see the WHO statement, they say there is no safety issue at all. They underline that point very clearly, trying to say, because all additives are actually threshold chemicals. That means they are dose dependent. Okay, so they have not found anything. So that is the reason why the JECFA has done the exposure assessment. Of course, even India, we have done, and the Pulkit has done studies, and it is hardly 1% of ADI or 2% of ADI that people consume particular additive. So this information has to go, and the communication has to. Risk communication is the most important thing.
So building on Dr. Rao's point of risk communication, and he mentioned about creating a mechanism to communicate signs that, in this case, FSSAI has put together really. What would you say that mechanism might look like?
So what I think is, Sabira, you need to have this consumer connect. Every responsible institute body which is giving these kind of recommendations has to have a very strong consumer connect. But having said that, they do, and they put it on their website. Most of these bodies would put it on their website. Otherwise, how else would they communicate? Separate screen time and all is not possible every time. What the problem here is, the mass. You can't even blame the consumer. So look at the increasing rates of cancer. Look at the increasing rates of all kinds of NCDs. The consumer is terrified. So they just have to hear, and so what comes in between the institute which is giving these guidelines and the consumer is the media. And if the media plays it up as a big, sensational news, which they won't want to, because that's how they operate. So that's where the problem comes in. So the consumer is in any case in a state of hysteria. They don't want to eat anything which is going to kill them the next day, because the media has already told you there's too much cancer, there's too much of heart disease, and people are dying. It's really amazing how many people go in to the hospital just thinking that they have either cancer or they have a heart disease, and they want to get all their tests done just to be sure. So anything. So it happened with, even when in 2015 the American Dietetic Association took out the guideline, they didn't do anything. They just removed the upper cap of cholesterol. They removed that 300 milligrams upper limit. That's all they did. And that was interpreted by the world media as you can binge eat, you can eat as much cholesterol and nothing is going to happen to you. So it works in the reverse also. It was just all over, and now we have this whole WhatsApp parallel media, operating, which is self-proclaimed experts giving their opinion on things. So it's very difficult to control information once anything is said out in public. So they have done their job as they have put out a guideline, but how that gets interpreted by media, by the parallel media, so let's not even blame real media, you have this whole social media which is interpreting it in their own sweet way. So it takes a lot of education to the community and regular messages perhaps from reputed bodies who they trust, and that would probably help.
Thanks very much, Dr. Mathur and Dr. Rao. So now I'm going to turn to the industry panelists over here. We're gonna keep to the topic of effective communication science, right? So based on what we've heard, this is the climate that the industry is taking the science that's out there, interpreting it in the way that they know how, and the media blowing it up because sometimes bad rap gets a lot more ratings. With this climate that we are dealing with, perhaps starting with you, Rajendra, and then Dr. Singh, you, what can we do about it as an industry? Because obviously this requires not just one stakeholder to manage it.
Yeah, thanks, Samira. So, Samira, I would start from, industry has its own set of challenges. One, of course, what we have mentioned, but also, we are sitting in a part of the region where we are largely carbohydrate consuming community. Secondly, sugar here, actually, for example, since we are concentrating on focusing on sugar here, let me give the example of sugar only. Sugar is associated in this part of the world with celebration. You have marriage, you have something with sugar or sweets or something. You have, you won the cricket match, there is something sweet. You have some family gathering, you have something sweet. You have festival, you have sweet. So one challenge is that only, how do we change the consumer behaviors where, we sort of educate them to take little less sugar and sometime with the products which are with no calorie sweeteners. That's the biggest challenge. That communication itself is a huge challenge. Now, the challenge is also for the formulator. For you and me sitting here and for the consumers at large, sugar is just seen as an ingredient to impart sweetness. But it is not the case for a formulator. For a formulator, sugar also lends structure to the product. And while it is certainly a problem for a beverage, but much larger problem for foods, because look at a product like jams and jellies where large portion is being constructed by the sugar itself. How do you remove that sugar and replace that with a minuscule quantity of additives? So we have a challenges for formulations per se. Then even before the communication, the consumer habit. Consumer has now there are established products, for example. Now I have been drinking actually thumbs up for last 30-40 years. Now I have developed that taste actually. The moment you change the sugar and with some other sweeteners and all, that taste goes. Obviously, there's a slight bit difference. No matter how much you make it in R&D, the consumer can make it out. So that's a challenge. Coming to their specific question of we can only request and sort of hope that ultimately the right science prevails. And I think NUGAG and IAC report is a very good example here. There is a buzz in the environment throughout the world actually that there is some concern on aspartame. But eventually, actually, the right science prevailed, and thanks to regulators, at least we have 29 regulators across the globe. They have immediately came and reflected, what JECFA has said is right, and aspartame is safe to consume. Thanks to FSI, actually, that I understand that there were a scientific committee meeting, 2 committee meetings have happened there, and then ultimately they have brought out a 6-page note for the consumer. So those things are help. But we, of course, we try our own ways actually to sort of educate consumer, but that's certainly a challenge, as Dr. Rao has mentioned earlier.
Thanks very much, Rajendra. Dr. Singh, would you have anything to add on that?
Sure. So I think if we look historically, the way science has evolved, that means you have better tools to deal with food safety challenges today compared to what you had a few centuries ago. Science has evolved, but the unfortunate part is still the perception challenge has grown equally big. While the science has grown, it has not resulted in a much better confidence in those products, but rather it has also created bigger perception challenge, which all of us in industry will have to deal with. And there is no other mechanism than engagement. We will need to engage with all stakeholders, including consumers, to give them confidence. And for that, we will continue to depend on credible scientific voices, whether they are regulators, whether they are individual scientists or science associations, because they are the ones which can give much better confidence to consumer about safety of any material. So that's at the communication and perception level. The other area where industry can work, and I do get a lot of hope from the slide that Dr. Ashley presented around the evolution side. Probably we are getting into those scientific areas like precision fermentation, where we will get alternatives which have a much better believability in the minds of consumer as far as science is concerned, because certain tags like natural are associated with those alternatives. So those are technological developments which will help us overcome these challenges. And the third is still a challenge that industry needs to crack, is those thresholds at which a consumer is able to decipher between the original and the reformulated product. The moment we are able to crack that threshold, our journey towards making reformulated products more acceptable to consumer will be much smoother. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dr. Singh. I think just keeping to this topic, maybe one point that I'd like to hear from Dr. Shruti, who's on the line. With the JAGFA IARC evaluation, is there anything in terms of the communication of it that could have been done better if something like that was to come out in the future for a different ingredient?
Well, I would say communication, how communication is handled is up to the agency that drafts the report and releases it. And I would like to comment on how the communication should be received. I think it is important to educate the consumers as well as the regulators across the world on not looking at any new data that comes out as a red flag. I think what is happening is, a lot of fear is created when people read that an evaluation was undertaken because new data came out, which means if the new data is positive, it is a problem. And that is really not the case. I think it's up to us as regulators, academics, as well as industry to ensure that the consumers know that the approach is still weight of evidence. Now, how the communication should have been released, I will say, like I work for a regulatory agency too, that decision is made by the regulatory agency taking into account several considerations which us experts are not aware of. But what we can do is ensure that when it is received, people know that it's not that a different approach of analyzing the data was taken. The approach remains the same. You do look at the totality of evidence, but it's still weight of evidence. And anything new that comes out which shows that it's positive doesn't mean that it's a problem. But at the same time, and I know this has been discussed previously by the other esteemed speakers too, that if an evaluation was conducted previously, then it's important to note whether the new information that has come into light, is it going to change that stance or not? That's the perspective. Now, if it changes, then, then the discussions are, okay, how has the ADI changed? Now, is it an issue? But if the conclusion is, well, new data came out, we looked at it, and it doesn't really change how we were thinking about it years ago, well, then that is a very important aspect of communication which should be explained to the consumers. And I know, Sabira, you mentioned how some of these things can be translated in layman's terms, and that remains as a challenge. I think that is a challenge that we all experience. I would say, again, in conclusion, that how a report is drafted may not be in our hands, but how it should be interpreted and communicated is definitely our responsibility as experts. And that is also a part of risk communication, which is under our control.
Thanks very much, Dr. Shruti. And I think the point about how it needs to be a collective effort in communicating the findings of whatever report that comes out quite carefully is really important, and not just being immediately alarmed by anything new that pops up, and taking it with a bit of a pinch of salt to assess before we move forward. Thanks again, Dr. Shruti. So I'm going to shift back to Rajendra on the point of focusing a little bit on consumers. When we talk about reformulation, and at FIA we did a bit of an assessment to see how consumers viewed ingredients, alternative ingredients to sugar, salt and fat, and they were generally quite receptive. About 75% across Asia, they were receptive to the use of alternative ingredients when it comes to reformulation. They were receptive to the idea of products being made healthier, so long as the taste was maintained. And I know that this is often a challenge for the industry. So how has Coca-Cola, or maybe you can speak on behalf of the broad industry standards, how are we responding to this consumer need, and perhaps how do you see this changing going forward as well?
Thanks, Evita. So, yeah, as I explained earlier, of course, there are huge challenges in formulations and all. They are there, but we are certainly doing actually our bit in that sense. So, what exactly we are doing, and it's not like we are only doing. By and large, the entire beverage industry is doing that. So, one is, of course, we, as I said earlier, we are offering to the consumer the entire range, right from zero to full sugar, and then in between combinations where it is a blend of sugar and sweeteners, and that slightly helps in terms of managing the lingering effect or slight bitterness effect of which comes from LNCS, so that we can try to go as close as to the taste which people have adopted over the years. So that's one. Secondly, actually, we are in a company, we are also going beyond the carbonated beverages and sort of expanding the other categories, where we can provide more nutritious and more healthier options in terms of more fruit juice. For example, we have a range called super fruits, where we have the much more juice quantity than it is required by the regulation. Plus, actually, it has a combination of again sugar and sweeteners, and it has some vitamins, minerals, and vitamins, which is basically a need of the country like India. Then we have in our hydration category, we are providing actually various options in the hydration category, where more electrolytes are being sort of given along with those hydrating beverages. Plus, we are creating again those blends actually between sugar and sweeteners, so that the consumers who do not like high sugar hydration products, we can give offers, we can sort of give choices to them. Of course, in hydration product, you need to have a minimum quantity of glucose to enable the faster hydration. That we are managing, but we are also giving them blends where you can have different options. These are some of the things actually which we are currently working, and of course we have here. So most of the products which we have seen rest of the world where consumer have picked up them, consumer has accepted them. We are trying slowly actually to sort of do pilot here in India as well, and sort of give those choices to the consumer here, where sugar is either very less or zero.
Thanks, Rajendra. And what you're saying is to take on a gradual approach in getting the consumer used to the different types of products that's available. And just thanks again for that. So, and just keeping to that, Dr. Singh, to you, how do you think now with reformulation going on, and with all of these products that's available out there for the consumers to choose from, what do you think might be the steps that would be required in order to make sure that the consumers are aware that alternatives such as all of these various products are available on the supermarket shelf? Who do you think are the key partners that needs to be working on this, and perhaps how, if you may?
I think as far as the availability of choices is concerned, I believe that is something that businesses will take care of in terms of reaching their target consumers and as to which kind of options are available. But when you are talking about the generic understanding of the options and desirability of these options for particular kind of consumers, that's where larger programs, like one of the programs that is set up by Government of India is Jago Grahak Jago, which is on consumer education. So that's a government run program to educate consumers, and these kind of initiatives which is around generic awareness and dissemination of facts based programs, these are things which can be integrated into those programs to make their reach much wider. As far as product based information is concerned, I believe businesses are much better suited to handle that.
Thanks, Dr. Singh. Just maybe one other point for maybe the floor could pick up on is when we talk about ensuring that the consumers are seeing the right information, labeling is a crucial part when it comes to reformulation, and also making sure that they are getting the right nutrients that they would require on a daily basis. We do have nutrition labels on the packages which are mandated. How else do you think as individual stakeholders, academicians, FSS as regulator and industry can further accelerate that knowledge and awareness of being able to read and understand the label more? So I'll open it to the floor. Any one of the panelists who would like to pick up? Dr. Rao?
Yeah. Now, the most important thing in the entire this thing is we are all consumers. As a consumer, we do actually, if you try to understand that where from you are, because one is the most nutritional literacy is very important. The second one is you try to understand that where from your calories are coming. No, whether you are getting sugar calories or fat calories or salt is high. So then you can easily decide, so what is good for you. That's the reason why we give the nutritional facts label. But what happens is when actually industry tries to their USP, then you have actually linked calories only to sugar. They think that if you just remove the sugar, then they think that calories are lost, so they can have any amount of fat, because how this sugar is being replaced. So what portion of that? Now you definitely have reduced the sugar calories, but how did you compensate that? So this is where actually what we are trying to say. Even Professor Ganguly has also opened it, but trying to say that you're actually adding fat. Especially if you see the Indian halwais or the sugar-free sweets that are available in Indian market, you see that the fat percentage goes up. Okay, but you think that you are not having enough calories because you are not actually consuming that sugar at all. So this, see, when you are highlighting, trying to say this happened with fat also, we said the fat is very bad. People started reducing it. I'm talking about the Western diets. Okay. So when you are actually oversimplifying the nutritional information also, there could be miscommunication. So the example is, that's what I said. You have linked calories only to sugar. Calories come from all the sources. So you try to understand where from it is coming. And that's what I said, that your starts with home kitchens. Okay, I am talking about ingredients. I am not talking about the products. Ultimately, what are we talking? We are talking about sugar, salt and fat. So you try to see where from you are getting it. So you don't think that you are getting everything from outside. You have to see from here, and then accordingly you can manage your diets, making it healthy.
Thanks.
So, Samira, if you allow me to make a quick comment here. So my feeling is actually now it's very difficult to educate the consumer on product in this part of the world where we have thousands of recipes. In any case, the product is not healthy or unhealthy. It is the ingredient which is making it healthier or unhealthier. We need to educate the consumer. Now then, if consumer finds a product, if he's educated, if he or she is educated, she can find out actually, okay, fine, this product has been reduced, to LNCS, sugars have been removed, but I still have fat and sat fat and other salt and all. So we need to go to the communication of the government and industry and all other stakeholders should be routed to that. It will take some time, of course, but that's the right communication rather than saying that this product is good and that product is bad.
Absolutely, and I think the important takeaway for us here is that there's no one product or no one food, be it made at home or out of home, that is inherently harmful. It's really about how it fits into the overall diet and how you're taking into consideration the portion that you're consuming. And doesn't mean to say that when it comes to a festive period, it means you're not going to have anything sweet just because you're keeping away, you're on a diet and you're not trying to eat any sugar. I think that's an cultural part of everyday living, and it's a social aspect that you will continue to abide to in time to come as well. And I think the bottom line here is to make sure we and educate the consumer and basically emphasize on mindful consumption overall. And just with that, I think we are really over time, but I would like to close off with you, Dr. Kavita, just to understand a little bit about how government bodies can continue to further collaborate with various stakeholders and not just the industry or academicians. What would your 2 cents be?
In terms of you are asking specific to the consumer or
No.
overall collaboration? Okay, with reform. Fine. Yeah. So yeah, if we look into the present condition, what we have, as I already said, we have already harmonized it with the codex. Also, we revisited all the sweeteners because the industry came up with a request like the sweeteners which is permitted in FSSR in our regulation, that is not permitted for children. Whereas we have sufficient literature available, the safety is not a concern. Then what is the harm in allowing in children the food of the children? So that time we had, as Dr. Ganguly said, we had apprehension like what could be the reason why it was restricted previously, not to be used for children. There should be some thought process into it. So, but then we couldn't get what happened in 1957, why this label warning was existing. So, but then we arrived at a conclusion, maybe the children of the growing age, they need more calorie compared to that of the adult. So, there is no need for a non-caloric sweeteners for them in their diet. But then in 1819, in that situation, India ranked 3rd position in terms of the prevalence of overweight and obesity in children. So in that case, we also felt like since we are promoting so many awareness program to reduce the high fat, salt and sugar, so we have to take a holistic approach. So in that note, we revisited entire sweetener. We collected all the preclinical, clinical data, peer-reviewed journals. We referred all the global regulatory bodies, what is available, and the JECFA monograph, and then we came to a conclusion where it can be permitted, and we are giving an ample provision for the industry to make use of it. In terms of reformulation, if you say after the analysis, we are permitting several sweeteners in the diet of the children as well. Also, if you look into our standards, we have a set standards where the FBO has to ensure compliance. Whereas to increase the innovation, and to aid in the reformulation, we have one more, just before 2012, there were no system. Every FBO had to manufacture as per the standards that is available with FSSAI. So there was a system called product approval system, but then it was squashed. There were several challenges. So later we came up with the proprietary food regulation. It opened the floor for the FBOs to come up with several reformulations, with the available standardized ingredients. So that is the way FSSAI helped the industry. Also, in other terms, we have a provision for non-specified food. If it is not fitting to the proprietary food, if something is novel, some novel technology or some new ingredients, then we have a separate approval system. There also we are encouraging the reformulation. So, we have the provision for the industry as well to come up with the reformulation, and without compromising the safety. If scientific evidence is available, we are acknowledging the same. So with respect to the consumer, we have a several forum to address the concern. There is a separate division called Social and Behavioral Change Division. So they create and disseminate awareness programs. They conduct several campaigns through electronic and print media. There are so many educative videos are also available in the website to reduce the high fat, salt, sugar consumption. And also we are continuously interacting with the states, whatever that is happening in the headquarters, we are disseminating to the states so that they could convert in the respective regional language and spread the awareness. And we are also sharing success stories. We are involving the celebrities, influencers to disseminate the knowledge to the end consumer as well.
Thanks very much, Dr. Kavita, for that. And I think maybe one other point I'll add to this is also the Eat Right commitment that FSSAI has been working on to engage more industry reformulation over the last couple of years. And I think that's, there are different elements and dimensions that you've mentioned to facilitate and accelerate that journey over the next few years. So before we close out today's session, I would like to take maybe 2 questions from the floor in the interest of time. Please, raise your hand. Yes, we have a speaker there. Introduce yourself, your name and your company and your question. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sunil Atsule. I represent Reliance Consumer Products. I head the regulatory affairs for Reliance. I think first of all, thank you to FICCI and the organizers to get a very timely topic going. I think it is much needed in terms of whatever we see currently, the I would say the developments that happen at WHO, then NOGAG, and also at JECFA. So I think my question, I think hearing from the team and in line with the title of this panel discussion, the need for food reformulation in India for healthier choices. Now my question is, I think, to anybody in the panel, not to anybody specifically, that do you see a role of sweeteners just beyond the packaged food industry? Because currently I think all of us here are from the packaged and processed food industry, but we heard from Dr. Anil in the beginning when he said in the opening speech that it is just the 15% of packaged food today. I mean, the entire food that is consumed is just 15% of what comes in. And I remember, I think years ago, I have seen some surveys coming from NIN's Dr. Sudarshan about NIN also talking about the consumption total, the food basket. If you look at totally the index assessment, maybe 12 to 15% is only coming from the processed food. And as you rightly said, the sugar, salt and fat not just coming from the processed food, but also comes from a larger thing. So how do we enable that environment where people start making use of the sweeteners? Because I don't remember anybody making use of for our local and the dishes which is we prepared at home. We heard Dr. Ganguly talking about rabdi and then other products also, but I don't see anybody making use of that. Primarily because I think the environment is not conducive to that extent because of some of the warnings that comes from the sweeteners. And also I think the functionality of sugar, which is again a bigger aspect. I'm sure that is something which is kind of being dealt with in the tomorrow session. My question, I think, to the panel is that do we see a role of the sweeteners in addressing that 85% of the consumption basket?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll just try to. Yeah, that's very important because what we are trying to do right now, see that the sweeteners are essentially used by the diabetics on a regular these things, and also people who are actually worried about the weight management. Of course, is not proved to be correct. The other one is that see now what we say that 60% of Indians are below 35, the youngest country. So these are the people who are likely to get into NCDs. Okay, they should be, even apparently healthy people also should try to reduce their sugar intake. Whether you are making an alternative is not, I am not talking about whether you use sweetener or not, but at least you should be able to reduce the sugar consumption. So that automatically will be actually you are reducing the risk of NCDs to at least to some extent, because it's a multifactorial, so lifestyle, stress, all those things, but one of them is definitely sugar. And what we find is that added sugar is not required. It may be difficult for you to actually avoid totally, but you can definitely reduce. So in that process, the alternatives are being given to us by the industry, like mixture, some sugar, some artificial sweetener, a different level of sweetness people are able to give it to you. So apparently healthy people also should try to reduce their sugar calories. Probably that will give an opportunity for us to actually go into the alternatives.
I have a question here.
Sorry, just 1 second.
I just want to add a little to that. So, FSSAI had a very effective campaign which said, Aaj se thoda kam. So what Dr. Sudarshan is talking, about is that you know, you reduce. So the whole thing was, okay, how do I reduce? I'm used to this level of sugar. So that Aaj Se Thoda Kam campaign said, okay, either start putting less sugar in your food, you know, very slowly. So from 2 teaspoons it moves to 1 and 3/4, and then so you don't perceive the change as very drastic, or you just reduce the portion size. So in that, I think Rajkumar Rao is the actor who's saying, okay, why do I have to eat the whole laddu? Let me just have half the laddu. So that's how you know, these campaigns can work in reducing total sugar intake in the general population.
Yes. Can I question?
Thank you very much. Yes, please.
I have seen one.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Pratik Lal. I am from RD Consultant for Food. I want to know that, like in some juices has come from Vietnam that that has 0 sugar calorie. So can that 0 sugar calorie or 0 salt calorie be made in food products?
Are you referring to claims, labeling claims on products?
0 sugar calorie, like it has been made in some juices from Vietnam. That's why.
Rajendra or Kavita, would you
So I think his question is that there is a product in market which claims that it's 0 sugar and it's a juice. His point is actually you may not have added sugar, but then the sugar must be coming from the inherent juices. Actually, how do we manage that? So I have no answer. I will have to look into
it is 0 sugar plus 0 calorie also.
Yeah.
So I think it's a advertising.
So unless we look into the product and get it analyzed, we can't say anything.
No, it's a misleading claim as well. You know, if the sugar is not added to the product, then they can claim it as no added sugar. But this will have inherent sugar and inherent calorie. So the 0 sugar and calorie is not an appropriate term. It's a misleading.
It means that there is no sugar or no added calorie in that. That's why.
Sir,
No.
may I request? You can send your request to FICCI or FSSAI. So this is a very specific element and completely different from the subject. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you
Can
all
I have one question,
so
please?
much. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Venkatesh, co-founder of healthyram.com. Not to be confused with, it's actually healthyram.com. It's a wellness marketplace based on the Indian wisdom of Ayush. You know, with the rise of health-conscious consumers today, you know, many of us, or most of them, or us included, perceive processed foods as the villains, right? Because you have everything processed and you should be having. And with the FSSAI, you're also adopting the guidelines for Ayurveda Ahar last year, along with Ministry of Ayush. You know, how can be the food reformulations be the hero when kind of harmoniously marrying Ayurveda principles or the traditional nutritional wisdom to adapt to the changing modern palates? How do we ensure that we maintain the traditional nutritional wisdom even though we are getting in the reformulation?
Thank you very much for your question. Is there anyone who would like to ask?
So, yeah, we have come up with the Ayurveda Ahara regulation recently, collaboration with Ministry of Ayush. Primarily, we have the nutraceutical health supplement regulation in place, but then there are certain botanicals which is of our origin, which is in use since Asian ages. So we have to recognize that, you know, this is something different. We got to know from the Ayush Ministry, like that is different from the medicine, Ayurvedic medicine. There are some 70 plus authoritative textbooks available, which is having the recipes similar to our proprietary, you know, like a rasam or a porridge. So that is to be consumed as a food. So since we are the regulator, food safety is the regulator, it should be channelized through the FSSAI. So we have come up with this Ayurveda Ahara regulation, and then we have clearly stipulated what it will be. We are just going with the authoritative textbooks, what they have given. The FBO are supposed to make the recipes, what is given in there, primarily, and they can bring out some combination out of among the recipes only. So these two kind of segregation, we made it in the regulation. But so far we have received, we have not received any applications. Once it is there, we'll again revisit how we are going to take it further. Yes, we have to preserve what is there in the tradition. There should not be any mix with the medicine. And there is a thin line of bifurcation only. Now also in nutraceutical and drug, there is a thin line of difference only. We are saying that should be less than 1 RDA, so that falls under food, and mere combination of vitamins, minerals are not allowed, that will be taken as a drug. So similarly, once this is in place, we have to work further. As of now, we have the regulation.
Thank you for the question and for the response, although we did digress a bit or a lot from the topic. I do have to come to a hard stop for today's panel session. If there's any other questions, I think you can have you can take it offline.
Yes, one question, please.
Sorry. Okay, one question. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Amit Soni. I'm from RDZ Foods. I work in millet cookies and cakes. I have a bakery and cafes in Jodhpur. My question is why sugar-free products are not tasty? Like I'm a bakery chef, but I couldn't make the millet cookies and with stevia and all. I have done 96 trials on stevia and with millets. Right now, I'm selling in like many big group of hotels and many companies, and even the ministries also. I'm serving to ministries. I made the first millet cake in India of 100 kg in Parliament. But I couldn't make the good products, even like drinks and many juices. Sugar-free products, why sugar-free products are not tasty like the with sugar are? That's my question.
That's a very difficult question. Can I just turn to Dr. Singh? Would you like to take this?
I don't think anybody can give you an answer but yourself. But yeah, there are technologies available which you can use. And for that, there are technology providers available. Connect with them and have some solutions.
Yeah, we have another comment.
So,
Mr. Tarun, please go ahead.
So there are products which are being formulated which almost as good as, or sometimes even better. We have some of those products. I would not want to talk about it. Not about my company. Have seen some products where you cannot make out the difference between sugar or a used sweetened product. Could share some.
So from Vicky, we can add that you can connect off.
So thank you all very much. I think if I may just wrap up with one closing statement on my part. As you can see clearly, it is a very long conversation that we can all have because there's a lot of different topics that were shared, but we couldn't delve into all of it today. Firstly, just from this discussion today alone, I think some of the key takeaways that we need to focus on is that with all of the publications that are coming up on sweeteners, on other ingredients as well, that may affect food product reformulation as a whole, it needs to be considered, it needs to be assessed for its merits and also the potential areas of misunderstanding that it could create. And as individual stakeholders that we have on this panel, the industry, the academicians, trade associations, regulators, and so on, you have a part to play in ensuring that that knowledge is being simplified and shared clearly to whatever stakeholder that you're reaching out to. And the bottom line of today's session, while it's an opening panel discussion and with more to discuss tomorrow around the science and the totality of sweetness and how it continues to play an important role for reformulation, I would like to close out by saying that sweeteners are one of the many tools in the toolbox that facilitates product reformulation. It is certainly not the silver bullet to weight management. Please don't take it in that direction. For example, it definitely has its benefits. It supports industry reformulation immensely, and it is a very safe ingredient, and it has undergone rigorous assessments overall. With that thought, I would like to close out today's panel discussion, and I would like to thank everyone at this table and also Dr. Shruti, who's on the call, who kindly joined us early in the morning, her time, to be a part of this discussion. With that, thank you all very much. Dr. Chonka, over to you.
For Sir, please keep sitting, sir. We may still have some questions though. No. So thank you very much, Sabira, for moderating this session, and each and every panelist who contributed. I think it was one of the most interesting panel discussions we have had, and I am sure that there were a lot of questions, but unfortunately the time doesn't permit us so much. We can have some offline discussions during the cocktail and dinners. Now may I request Mr. Tarun Arora. He is the President, FICCI Center of Nutrition. Sir, please will you come on the dais. We would like to give a small token of appreciation from the FICCI Center of Nutrition Excellence to Mr. Tarun Arora. He is the Chief Executive Officer and whole-time Director of the Zydus Wellness Limited, a leading FMCG player, and President of Center of Nutrition. So FCNE, that's it. So may I request first to please Sabira Arora will give a small token of appreciation. Thank you. Dr. Jasbir, go from the sequence. Thank you. I have the pleasure, Dr. Pulkit Mathur, please. Thank you so much. Dr. Kavita, thank you. Dr. Rao, please. Thank you. And Mr. Rajendra Dobriyal, please. For a group photograph, please. And the panel member after that, please keep sitting. Just have a small. I request the panel members to be seated, please. You have to catch a flight. Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Now, may I request Mr. Tarun Arora to deliver the concluding remarks. I request panel members to please hear it, sir. Sir.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of FICCI and FICCI Center for Nutrition Excellence, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all the esteemed speakers, experts, industry colleagues, and stakeholders present today for the symposium and for sharing your valuable insights in the domain of sweeteners. As we gather here to conclude this remarkable day one of the symposium, I would like to mention that the deliberations and discussions that happened today at this forum are very valuable and insightful. We're grateful for the wisdom you have imparted upon us and must say that it's the need of the hour. Capturing some of these, in the inaugural session, Professor Ganguly and Dr. Roberts shared their decades of experience and extensive work on sweeteners in India as well as globally. Both of them emphasized that that after rigorous assessment, sweeteners have been approved. There is a need for consumer awareness that they are safe. Shri Saroj Kumar Jha, Additional Secretary, MOFPI, shared his valuable inputs on the work to be done by the industries and ensuring the support of MOFPI as may be required. And he used the word on which I think got my attention was responsible innovation, and therefore how we could as an industry. And I think moving on to expert panel and not talking too much of details, but there was this whole starting conversation while the panel discussed the 360-degree views on the sweetener category, but there was clearly a focus on food safety
and responsibility of all the stakeholders, where each of these members have to do their bit to make this happen. Similarly, there was discussion on regulatory, policy, nutrition perspectives on the sweeteners, industry and consumer choices, and building awareness, and impact of reformulations. I hope we will keep the momentum towards debunking the myths and disseminating the facts and science around sweeteners. This will help to achieve the objective of enabling innovation and reformulation of existing products while helping consumers to make informed choices. It's a one agenda with multiple dimensions. It's a long journey, and I'm confident that we will all continue our engagement in driving the way forward on this. I would also like to acknowledge the hard work and dedication of the FICCI team for organizing the symposium and providing a platform for discussions. Their meticulous planning, attention to detail, and unwavering commitment have ensured a seamless experience for all of us. I want to express my appreciation for each participant in the seminar. Your active engagement, thoughtful questions, and willingness to share your experiences have created a vibrant and dynamic atmosphere here. Thank you for all your contributions to this exceptional conference. I look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow for day 2 of the symposium, where we will continue to delve deeper into the exciting world of sweeteners. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tarun, for concluding today's session. We have the session tomorrow for the whole day, beginning at 10 a.m. tomorrow. We'll see you there, but before that, the announcement that the cocktail and dinners are open. So welcome to the hall outside. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, everyone.